couldn't see, and my oxygen was running low. The third thing that really brought this to a critical situation was when we heard the abandoned building.
In the fire service, and also especially in Berkeley right now, what we respond to and what we're expected to be prepared for is way more complex than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. I don't think there's a firefighter in California who's not at least proficient at the basic levels of ICS. Getting to a call, taking IC, assigning groups and divisions, going to work. But what happens on these low frequency, high risk calls is you have to add complexity to that. What do you do when the third floor is too big for a single division? What happens when you have groups overlapping with divisions? What happens when you branch out a building? Those are all things we learn and we train on, but we don't do every single day. We can run a basic ICS call on a medical aid, on a fire alarm, on a single alarm fire. Where we tend to get into trouble and where we really need to put a lot of attention to is what happens, how do we succeed at building out organization and maintaining accountability of all of our crews. Every single member's life is critical. Firefighter Record was able to fall back on the critical training he received just a few weeks before to get himself out of a bad situation. But we need to be thinking forward to how do we avoid that situation happening in the first place.
On Friday, September 30th, 2016, the Berkeley Fire Department responded to a reported structure fire at 2345 Channing Way in Berkeley. Upon arrival of the first in Berkeley units, the response was escalated to a second alarm. Soon after, it was elevated to a mutual aid structure response, effectively a third alarm. Fire conditions worsened. A partial roof collapse was reported. Division 3 reported deteriorating conditions. At this point, IC elected to abandon the building. During the evacuation and prior to roll call, exterior crews on the Delta side reported a firefighter positioned on a third-floor windowsill ready for rescue. A Mayday was simultaneously broadcast on all channels. Suppression crews repositioned the hose streams to provide protection from the flames above the firefighter. Others positioned an extension ladder to the bottom of the windowsill. This is the ladder. The firefighter effectively self-rescued down the ladder and was taken to rehab near the ICP. He was evaluated and released by EMS personnel. He was uninjured. According to Weather Underground, the temperature was 67 degrees with a humidity of 69%. Winds were 10 to 15 miles per hour out of the west with good visibility and dry conditions. The structure was a 3-story masonry brick church complex with a large basement spanning most of an entire city block. It had been remodeled in May 2003. The fire building itself was Pilgrim Hall with a footprint of 23,973 square feet. This section was separated from the greater church complex by a masonry brick wall. There were, however, several large penetrations in this wall according to the plans.
Full assignment, Fire District 5 at 2345 Channing Way.
So around 12:30-ish, all of the 911s lit up. The first call we got was that they gave us the address, and they said that the roof was on fire.
Initially, when the call came in, I was actually the training officer for Don Lockhart, who was the fire dispatcher at the time.
So I'm new here in Berkeley. I was going through training. It was the day before I was to be released from the fire board. And I have over 10 years experience at another agency where we also did fire.
Engine 5 with Engine 4, Engine 3, Engine 1, Truck 5, Medic 3, Battalion 2. Respond for a full assignment fire, 2345 Channing Way, 2345 Channing Way.
I was on Medic 3 with firefighter Raven. record. He was my partner for the day. We were actually leaving Station 2.
Crosses Dana or Ellsworth. We're getting multiple calls with flame seen coming from the roof.
I was the apparatus operator that day. We were part of the second alarm.
Should be a congressional church. Units respond on command 11 with TAC 31 assigned. Timeout 12:35.
I was actually at Station 2, having lunch with the fellows there. I was actually sitting next to Deputy Chief McCracken at the time. She said, "I'll go to dispatch." I go, "Okay, well, I'll follow up to go to the call." And then shortly thereafter, heard the report on conditions, which sounded like it was maybe possibly an exterior roof fire.
All companies on command 11. This is Battalion 2. I have a 3-story brick structure. I got fire showing from the roof. We're going to call this working fire. We got fire on the roof on the alpha side. Person engine company is going to need to catch a hydrant, which is right on the northwest corner of this location. Switching to command or TAC 31.
So I was downtown, heard the fire come in and knew right away that it was going to be a significant fire. So attached myself to the call, showed up with the first alarm companies.
I asked the duty chief what he wanted me to do, and he was still kind of organizing his initial alarm, and hadn't had an opportunity to do a 360 yet. So I went and did a 360 of the building, went back, reported into the command post, and at that point they had a pretty significant presence assigned to Division 3, and they wanted a chief officer up there to take the division. So I got assigned to Division 3, grabbed an SCBA, headed up there.
As we made our way up to the 3rd floor, our visibility was clear.
We were both assigned initially to help pull ceiling, and then eventually I was asked to assist on a 2.5. Raven remained on the assignment he initially got, which was pulling ceiling.
It was clear on the 3rd floor. The fire was pretty much entirely in the attic. There was very little smoke. People were operating with clear lines of sight throughout the whole 3rd floor. Division 3 was a little bit strange. It's a building that the street's on a slope, so depending on where you were on the floor, it could have been the 2nd floor, it could have been the 3rd floor.
As the fire progressed, we had a hard time pulling the ceiling because it had the thick metal wiring behind the sheetrock.
And it was about that point where I really kind of stepped back and took stock of who do I have, who's up here. We got mutual aid crews coming in.
I was in and out of the 3rd floor for probably 30 to 45 minutes. For the first half an hour, it was completely clear on the 3rd floor. That time basically consisted of the crews trying to figure out how to get access to the fire.
I had that little voice in the back of my head going, hey, you don't have a good span of control here, right? We had too many crews up there and I didn't have a good accounting of them. One of the things we do in Berkeley is we have ambulances we transport. I believe when I got assigned to Division 3, in the verbal handoff, they had told me that there was a medic unit up there. A lot of times they'll be assigned to a suppression unit, but it's not a given.
Priority traffic. We've got a chimney collapse on the top of the structure.
It was good. We had a couple of pretty experienced captains operating on the 3rd floor there. We met face-to-face as a group, 4 or 5 of us, agreed that it was still tenable inside, agreed on some trigger points.
Eventually the fire passed us in the hallway. We were working in where most of the fire attack crews were working in. The fire passed that hallway, so we went into the room behind the hallway, and that's where it was a lot easier to pull ceiling because we kind of used the 2.5 to our advantage. It had a smooth board, so we opened the 2.5, we fully opened the bell and kind of took the 2.5 and swept it along the ceiling, and that knocked down all the sheetrock and gave us a foundation to work with, a starting point, at least for that room.
Operations Division 3. Good operations. Ops Division 3. Conditions are changing rapidly. We need additional lines up here.
It wasn't a standard single space attic. There was multiple buildings attached to one another, compartmentalized attic spaces, and the fire was, showing up in places that didn't make sense. So trying to figure out how to get ahead of the fire and how to contain it.
So we kept working. At that point, we had crews. Fire was starting to get over us, over towards the Delta side.
Me and Raven were pulling ceiling. Dewan and Johnny Bowie, they were on the 2.5, and we kind of pulled ceiling. We actually pulled it to the limit the width of the room, and we stepped back, and at that point, that's when the conditions changed. I went straight out the door. Raven went to my right out into the other room, because it was 2 rooms that were being separated by a door.
I went back to where the crew was that I had left. I was probably working in that room with Thaxton 2 to 4 minutes. It wasn't a long time. Yeah, it was rapid condition changes.
My vibrator alert started to go off. And at that point, I looked around for my partner, Raven. I couldn't see him. I didn't know where he was at the time. So I checked with a few officers. I did a real quick look around. My vibrator alert was going off. I assumed because my vibrator alert was going off that his vibrator alert was going off as well.
As I started walking through the room, got about maybe a third of the way through, and I realized that I couldn't see. I was essentially going by my memory. I decided to find a wall and revert to a right-handed search to get back to the door that I'd come through.
From the very beginning of the incident, it seemed like we were behind the 8 ball. We couldn't get enough people on scene. You know, it was a building construction that we weren't used to, and we didn't adapt to that. So the fire, and it was a well-seeded fire by the time we got there already, so smoke pushed down from the attic, and in my head I'm thinking either this fire's flashed in the attic or it's become wind-driven, it's time to go. And all the officers pretty much had the same idea, because we all met up by the foyer on Division 3 and said, it's time to get out of here. And almost at that same time, command called to abandon the building.
Myself and 3 other officers came together, decided it was a big enough floor that we would each go different directions and just make a quick check of each room of the 3rd floor.
I did a sweep of the east side, and by the time I was doing the sweep, it was 0 visibility conditions, so I was basically hunched down trying to get below the smoke, you know, doing this kind of thing and just yelling, you know, hey, is anybody up here, anybody up here? And I remember searching through the east side of the structure, and I came out one of the back doors that leads to a deck, and head back. I closed the door and I head back out the building to the front door. And after the event, you know, talking to Raven and other folks and looking at the building construction, there was an entire room that I missed in the primary search, which is where Raven was at. The door was closed, and during fire operations, furniture had been moved around, so there was a passageway to the door, but it was really narrow, and I just, you know, went over the desk that was right there, and I just totally missed the door that was right next to it.
As that was taking place, my vibrator alert went off. 2 strikes in, I couldn't see, and my oxygen was running low. The 3rd thing that really brought this to a critical situation was when we heard the abandoned building.
Emergency traffic on all channels. Fires going to defensive mode. All companies, abandoned building. Repeating, defensive mode. All companies, abandon and exit building.
When I heard that, I said, okay, well, this is 3 strikes. 1, I knew I was essentially alone. Couldn't see more than about 6 inches in front of my face. I was low on air. Again, nobody was around me. I said, well, this is what's talked about. This is what we train for. I can use all my energy to get out, meaning fight, kick, scream, bite, whatever I can do. Or I can keep a level head, do the same thing, but just in a methodical manner. As I worked my way, doing a right-handed search, I eventually found a window. Once I got to the window and I opened it up, I took my regulator off in order to be heard. I thought I was on the 2nd floor because I only went up 1 flight of stairs, but realized that the way the building was constructed, I was 2.5, 3 stories off from the ground. My first thought, as I was opening the window, was to hang and drop from the window sill and go back to work. As I looked down to the ground, I saw that there was a staircase, cement staircase going from ground level to sub-level. My second thought was to drop my bottle, sit on the windowsill, and push myself out to the ground and that too went out the window pretty quick. I realized that I'd have to clear the building, clear the staircase. I looked up and down the street. I saw our rigs, our truck, and I saw a couple engines. But because I was so high up, and also because everybody who was on the ground was at ear level with the engines, me yelling to them from inside my mask, even though I had my regulator off, didn't produce any body hearing me. And they were far away. And I looked towards the corner of the building, which was the Alpha Delta corner, and I saw that the fire was in the eaves. It was eating fast. It was a wind-driven fire. The aspect of the building in that point was running east to west. The wind was coming out of the west, so I realized that it was a wind-driven fire at that point, and it had been burning for a long time.
Emergency traffic, emergency traffic. Firefighter record, I'm located on the Delta side of the building, out of window. No visibility. I'm on my way. I got heavy smoke coming out here.
When I said that, the response over the radio, I believe, was...
Medic 3, I copy emergency traffic on Berkeley 1 Delta, side of the window, emergency traffic, lots of smoke.
I waited a couple seconds, kind of processed that, and realized that that wasn't going to give me any help. So I called a Mayday.
Mayday, firefighter record. Delta side of the building.
And I was working the main fire channel. It was approximately maybe 30 minutes into the call, I think. I was handling the city and I heard Medic 3 call Mayday on channel 1. And so I immediately announced it on the floor.
The Mayday was called, but again, he was on the main channel. He was on Kathy's channel. And you hear it out of a speaker somewhere, and you're like, did I hear what I thought I heard? You don't hear those all that often. And as the dispatcher sitting in a seat, when you hear the Mayday, you know something is dangerously wrong.
I heard my fellow dispatcher taking the call, taking the radio transmission, and then I immediately told my trainee, PSD Lockhart, to broadcast out on all channels.
I came outside, walking down the stairs. I'm looking at the IC, and he asked me, hey, is everybody out of the building? And I yelled across the street, yeah, everybody's out. We just did a search. And like within a minute of me saying that, I hear the Mayday on channel 1. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I can't believe it. Like, we missed a guy and left a guy up there.
Soon after I put my Mayday out, around the corner came a ladder. Did a ladder bailout. As I got down, I rested for a bit, had some water, and then asked for my next assignment. I looked back to the window I just left, and it was engulfed in flames.
The scope of this video is not to look at tactics used or the outcome of any investigation. Berkeley Fire Department and surrounding agencies put the fire out, limiting it to the main fire building and stopping it on the 3rd floor. Dispatch maintained a 10-minute timer throughout the fire. They recognized and repeated a Mayday coming over Berkeley Fire's main dispatch channel to the command and tactical channels being used on the fire. On-scene crews were scanning and responded before command could react. This was due to the speed of the rescuers, not any shortcoming on the part of operations. We know that the window firefighter Record exited from was filled with fire less than 2 minutes after he was out. If we use firefighter Record's interview to gauge time frames, from the time conditions changed until he was out was no more than 6 minutes. The interval from normal conditions to an unsurvivable situation was between 7 to 8 minutes.
One of the main issues in the fire service in general is the increased demands that we have for time. Our most valuable resource right now is time. The demands are naturally going to increase, and that's what any fire department in pretty much in this country that's going to be facing this or is facing this at this point. One thing that we cannot sacrifice is that critical time that we need for training. One of the factors that contributed to this incident not going bad is the fact that specifically for this particular unit, Medic 3 came down after training was already done and felt that this was an important training session, and we could have easily said, hey, you guys need to go run calls, we'll just catch up with you eventually. But what we'll end up doing is that two instructors actually felt it was that important to go run through this drill that they stayed after to practice with these folks and get them going and making sure that they were at the proficient level. A small example in the grand scale of things, but it's us as a division of training understanding this is a priority and we need to focus a little bit more time and effort into this particular training. This paid dividends by that firefighter saving himself that particular day.
911, what's your emergency?
Yeah, hi. I'm calling about a fire.
Where?
In Berkeley, at Channing and Dana.
What's on fire?
A building.
What's the address?
The address is 2345 Channing.
Okay, you see flames?
Pardon?
Do you see flames? Do you see flames?
Oh yes, I do see flames.
You know what's on fire?
The chimney, the roof.
The chimney is on fire?
The roof is on fire.
Oh, okay, roof is on
From
fire.
the chimney, it's coming from the chimney, the roof is on fire. Again, the address is 2345 Channing.
Oh, what's your name? Okay, we're on the way there. Are you in the building? Can you get everyone out?
I'm not in the building. There are a bunch of people notifying other people.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
I already made it. 911, what's your emergency?
Hi, my name is Christian. I'm in Berkeley.
Yes. Are you calling about the fire on Channing Way?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're on the way. Thank you.